Pashtuns, the Taliban is a Pashtun-based insurgency. Pashtuns are about 40%. So you would need the Tajiks to completely crush the Pashtun population and expel them in large numbers. And then perhaps the Americans can come in and look like the heroes. But that's not going to happen. There are much more Pashtuns. Again, it's a rural-based insurgency, so you're never going to get to them. You will, I think, have a civil war. Things do seem to be going in that direction. But I think the similarities between Iraq and Afghanistan are very few.
President Obama also praised the United States as a country that has not sought world domination or occupation.
More than any other nation, the United States of America has underwritten global security for over 6 decades. A time that, for all its problems, has seen walls come down and markets open and billions lifted from poverty, unparalleled scientific progress and advancing frontiers of human liberty. For unlike the great powers of old, we have not sought world domination. Our union was founded in resistance to oppression. We do not seek to occupy other nations. We will not claim another nation's resources or target other peoples because their faith or ethnicity is different from ours. What we have fought for, what we continue to fight for, is a better future for our children and grandchildren, and we believe that their lives will be better if other people's children and grandchildren can live in freedom and access opportunity.
President Obama last night at West Point, Nir Rosen.
Well, every empire has claimed it's not an empire. It doesn't want to occupy. It wants to help. And indeed, the American empire has done the same thing. The British in Iraq were uttering the same things the Americans in Iraq were uttering in their occupation. Why do we have military bases all over the world if we're not an empire seeking to control much of the world? These days, imperialism works in a different way. Maybe you don't need direct physical control of every place, but you still have that physical force and the threat of violence. And indeed, I think we're actually a failure as an empire. We actually managed to make the Taliban look good. We took the most detested regime in the world, the Taliban, removed them in a matter of weeks, and here, 7, 8 years later, they're more popular than ever. They're stronger than ever.
Among who?
Among people in Pakistan and many Afghans, at least many Pashtuns. And when I've been in Afghanistan, you often hear non-Pashtuns expressing hostility to Americans. I've heard many Tajiks say, America dushman Islam, America is the enemy of Islam. Nobody really wants the Americans there.
Finally, Professor Bacevich, your book is called The Limits of Power, The End of American Exceptionalism. Responding to what Nir Rosen has said and President Obama's last point about why we are in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think the President's sort of a capsule description of modern U.S. history and our role in the world is extraordinarily important. And the reason it's important is because that text could have been lifted out of a speech by Harry Truman, by John Kennedy, by Lyndon Johnson, by Richard Nixon, by Ronald Reagan, or by George W. Bush. This is the preferred narrative of American history, the way we prefer to see ourselves, and therefore the narrative that we use to justify all that we do in the world. It is really telling and extraordinary that this president, whose background is quite different from all those other presidents that I just named, and who came to office promising to bring about change. It's extraordinary that he himself would now embrace that narrative so uncritically. And I think that that is indicative of the extent to which, whether there's going to be any change in Washington, it's simply going to be changes on the margins, and that the Washington consensus, the status quo, is firmly in place.
Comment, Nir Rosen, on what you think, if you were standing at West Point last night, you would have been saying.
I would have mentioned Kashmir and Palestine and the history of American support for dictatorships in the Middle East and the Muslim world as the cause for this al-Qaeda phenomenon, for this resentment of the U.S., and I would have
And the actions you would have announced?
It's impossibly naive. They require a revolution in the way America does business. But stop supporting the dictatorships in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and elsewhere. Stop supporting the Pakistani dictatorship or quasi-dictatorship. Stop supporting Israeli occupation of Palestine. Be perceived as a fair player in the Middle East and the Muslim world. Stop killing Muslims. Muslims will not want to kill you. It's really very easy.
Nir Rosen, independent journalist, recently back from Afghanistan, has been covering Afghanistan and Iraq since 2003, a fellow at NYU Center on Law and Security. And thank you very much to Andrew Bacevich, professor of history and international relations at BU, a retired colonel and Vietnam War vet, the author of Limits of Power. That does it for our broadcast from our new printing press studios. We'd love your comments on the studio. You can send us your thoughts at stories@democracynow.org. And very special thanks to those who have come out today to watch the broadcast, and to Karen Ranucci and Julie Crosby. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much.